MJ, welcome to the Owners Club Member Spotlight interview. I'm so happy to have you here with me today, and I look forward to you introducing yourself to our audience and telling them all about you and what your business is.
Oh, thanks for having me. I am MJ Thomas. I'm the founder of Malaya Studios. We're located in California for now. And we have three collective studios providing beauty services with over 14 artists in each location. We have two in Pacifica, one in Rockland, and another one that's being nurtured right now in Georgia. And we also
Oh my gosh,
have
perfect.
yeah, it's so awesome. And that is actually one of our collective residents who branched off. So that was really cool. And now we have trainings for professional service providers. We also offer mentorships. And during the pandemic, I developed a lash brand and lash tools so that students who take courses also have the products that we use as well.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Many facets to what you do.
Hmm.
Who do you primarily serve? It kind of sounds like there's a few groups of different people, whether it be training, actual people who are providing the service, or your customers. So tell me, who do you serve?
Right. So there are two different audiences. So primarily, our studios serve people who are looking for services, people who who want lashes, who want skincare, who want waxing, who are looking for permanent makeup. So the studios with our resident artists serve primarily clients who are looking for those services. And then the business side of the brand also serves professional lash artists, permanent makeup artists, estheticians. People who are looking to get into the beauty service industry, whether they're looking for trainings or products or mentorship in starting their solo service businesses.
I love it. Okay, that is so cool.
Yeah.
I love the multifaceted side. And then what do you have planned next? What is next for Malaya?
You know, with the temperature of the industry right now and the economy, it's just to stay steadfast and stay
Yeah.
consistent. We had a big pivot that we had to make in 2020, like a lot of other businesses had to, and it ended up being a good thing for us because I was able to focus and reorganize the business side of things and the offerings that we had for professionals. So just continuing to nurture that and then support the existing studios to make sure everyone's happy, keep the culture together and then grow more on the e-commerce side. So I guess what we're focusing on in the next year is to have a wider reach and a deeper impact. Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. And how, just out of my own curiosity, how has
Yeah.
then expanding to e-commerce been? Because you've been so primarily a service business, which is predominantly what people in Owners Club have as well. How has it been expanding into product?
Um, I like to look at it as an adventure. It is there's lots of learning curves. There are lots of learning curves
Yeah.
and for business owners like service providers, a lot of our time in the beginning goes towards like the actual service. Now,
Yeah.
with e-commerce, it's a little different, right? We're dealing with different platforms, we're dealing with SEO, we're dealing with um, just shipping. Shipping was a huge learning curve for me. And so with time being a little bit more limited because I had all these other facets, I had to kind of figure out like what actually needed to be me, which was more so like the brand creation and what I wanted the products to um, be like in terms of quality and things like that. So that had to be me. But then, like the build out for the e-commerce platform didn't need to be me. So in the beginning, when I had time during 2020, because our studios were shut down, I dove into kind of trying to learn everything. And then there was a point where I was like, okay, this is totally out of my scope of practice. I would rather just pay somebody and then I can focus on things that actually move the needle. So, learning that part, like when is it time to kind of seek out professional help and then focus on what actually moves the needle or what I can, move the needle. So that part of e-commerce has been a little bit of rocky adventure, but it's starting to be fun now because I feel like this is now year three. And I feel like I've gotten a little bit more traction and I'm seeing what is working and then now doubling down on that. So it's a bit, it was a little messy, but I mean, I think things start messy before they start to look pretty.
Exactly. And you just talked about
Hmm.
such a pivotal moment where as business owners we oftentimes have to do a lot ourselves, especially in the beginning, and you have to almost be good enough at everything. And by no means are you going to be able to be a person that's perfect at marketing and finance and web design and operations. Like you just can't be good at everything. And so you being at that pivotal point of like when to hire and knowing that and trusting that is so much more important than you trying to get perfect at something that probably is not the best use of your time.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I feel like that's where a lot of um, owners get, they become their own bottleneck, right? Like they
Yeah,
try to
exactly.
maintain the control, and then you end up just kind of getting in the way of your own growth. So yeah, that was
Exactly.
that
Knowing
was
when
that
to
was
hand over. It's so
absolutely.
true.
Hmm.
Um, so if you were to take me back in time and start from the beginning, walk me through the origin story of your professional career. How'd you get started? Why'd you choose this type of business? Where did it all come from?
Oh, that's so funny because I feel like when you say professional business, I kind of giggle inside because I'm like, am I professional? I totally am a professional. But what's really cool about um, what's really cool about my business is I really feel authentically myself. And in the beginning, I thought I needed to be more this or more that. And I realized what actually ended up working for me was when I was authentically myself and authentically doing work that I felt connected to. So in the beginning, I was a pre-med student. I was a pre-med
No
student
way.
and I was a pre-med student. I come from a line, my mother is a nurse practitioner. She has some really huge shoes to fill. And she finished her master's while she finished up her last round of chemo. I mean, this woman is
Wow.
like unstoppable. So um, they both came, my mom and dad came from the Philippines and worked really hard. And my mother always told me, you just really need to have something that is gonna provide for yourself and for your family, and always make sure that you have your own money before you get married. Like all of these stories, money stories that I grew up with. So when I finished school, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go into pre-med, even though I really love music and I would totally love to study
Yeah.
music, but that was kind of the start of me thinking that I needed to be a certain way, right? So um, as I started that journey, I also decided to be a mother, and I had my first daughter at 19, and that was a choice, and I didn't look at it as a hindrance, but more so motivation. I'm like, okay, so I really have to figure this out, and I doubled down. I went to school. I also got a job at the hospital. At the time was UCSF, and I was just in the environment. I was trying to work backwards, right? So let me just start with being in the environment that I eventually want to be in, get to know all the nooks and crannies of the industry. And I also bartended just to fill in the gaps, and all the while having a young daughter. So as I got into my first year, I realized that this was really hard, right? Really hard. And the big thing was not having enough time. So I remember talking to my mother. I was like, did you always know that you wanted to be in the medical field? Because I was having a hard time connecting. And she was like, absolutely. I knew I always wanted to be in the medical field. I'm like, okay, I don't feel that way. And she was
That's
like,
not me.
Jess, that's not me, but if you say so, I will. Okay. Okay, that's okay. So I then was like, okay, well, if you could do anything now that you are in the position that you're in, what would you do if you could do it over? And she said, I would open a med spa and we would do facials and laser and injectables and all of this stuff. And I'm like, that's really neat. And she was like, yeah, and they have clinic hours. And I was like, oh, that's really awesome, because I was working in the hospital and I was watching the residents, which I was hoping to become one day, and they were working 80 hours a week. They all looked burnt out. No one was happy. And I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, this is going to be what I am pursuing, right? So I kind of took what she said, and I went down this rabbit hole of like, what's a med spa? How could I pivot into that kind of industry? And I found becoming an esthetician and this program that was only 4 months, and you become a licensed professional. I was like, okay, well, why don't I do that and then get into that industry and then start to refigure. And just when things kind of fall into place, they just fall into place. I ended up getting into a program when I couldn't get into classes that I needed, and things just aligned. You know that feeling when things just kind of align and it just
You like no
flows at.
longer feel the resistance.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. There was no resistance. So I signed up, and it turns out, first day of class, I get a facial. I didn't even know what that was. And I woke up from this facial and I was like, this feels like something I could do. And I went into the program, took every certification, just totally downloaded everything. And when I finished, my teacher, who owned a studio at the time, like a beauty studio, offered me a commission position. I didn't know anything about it, so I just said yes. And I started working, and I loved it. I continued to love it. And then I continued to work at the hospital and bartend. And it was time to sign up for my classes. And right before that happened, I get a phone call from a classmate of mine who was already renting at a spa, and said, hey, I'm leaving my space. Would you like to take a look at it? Maybe you would like to rent it. Didn't know what that meant. So I went and checked it out, and it turned out to be in my hometown. And I was like, what does this even mean? She's like, you just rent it and you run your business here and you make your own hours. And that's it. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this for a year. And that was the thing. Like, I gave myself a timeline. I paused taking my classes. I paused everything else, and I was like, I'm going to do this for a year. And if I cannot figure it out in a year, I will go back to school and I will not complain and I will finish what I started. Right. So I told myself as well, hey, the moment you're making the same amount as the hospital, you're going to quit the hospital for a year, take a leave, whatever, and you're going to focus on this, and we'll revisit. I quit the hospital 2 months later, and
No way.
I couldn't believe it. And I only knew I could quit because I told myself, when I set a goal, like, when you're making this much, then you quit. So I hit that, and I didn't feel ready, whatever ready should feel like, right? I
Yeah.
was like, oh no, oh no, I have to quit. So but I remember I asked for this. So, okay.
Yeah.
So I quit and I focused, and I like to work backwards because otherwise I can work to the bone and just feel so lost. So I made sure I was able to drop off my daughter, pick her up, do the things that were important. Uh, Volunteer for the field trips, those little things, just have time control. And I was like, if I
Yeah.
can do this and at that year mark, I'm still okay, then I will venture off and look for my own place. Okay, so I set another goal. And then at that year mark, I transferred my daughter to a private school. I bought a new car. It was, it was, it was amazing. Like I hit all the goals that I set, and then the year came up and I was like, "Oh no, I said I was going to look for another space." Cuz should I do it or
You're
just
like,
this is
shoot, I
good.
did it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, well this was good. There's that place of comfort. And I was like, "Well,
Yes.
I'll just look. I will just look. And then if not, worst case,
And were
I
you
just stick
looking to
to this."
rent or buy?
Well, at the time, I also didn't have established credit. So I found out that I wasn't able to buy because I needed that. So I was like, okay, great. Now I have a business. Let me establish myself as a business. And then I learned more about establishing business credit, right? Because I shot my shot about buying, and turns out I needed things to be in place. So I was like, okay, fair enough. I will get those things in place and
Yeah.
continue. So I rented my first place, and I found a place not too far from where I was, bigger square footage, and the amount I was paying in square footage and rent versus this new place was like I couldn't believe it. So I immediately like cut my lease, signed this lease. I didn't know what I was doing, but the money made sense. So I just said I was going to figure it out. And then I
Oh
got
my
into
gosh.
this, yeah, I just got into this bigger place. I eventually got too busy, which is a great thing. And then I sought help. And that's when I got my first contractor. And then, 14 years later, I have 14 other residents, and a thriving business in Pacifica, moved, a couple hours away and started another one. And this is growing and with less, learning curve because I've done this a few times now. So yeah, that was the beginning. And it was just started because I wanted to have more control over my time, really.
Oh my gosh, I love it. What what's so powerful, or one of many things that are so powerful about your story, is how you need to time bound what you want, and you need to also define what you want. And you did that every step of the way, which I attribute
Yes,
to part of your success in a very pivotal way, where it's like you have to keep pushing yourself of like, if this happens in this time, I will do this. If this happens in this time, I will do this. And you
yes,
keep pushing yourself or having those boundaries because, like you said, things will never feel like the right time. And I think a lot of people struggle with time of like, I will do it later, I will do that down the road. And it just never happens because it's not time bound or goal bound. And although it
correct.
didn't feel comfortable to quit, it's like you still just have to push yourself to do it if you know that. And it's that's when the most growth happens. It's not when you're comfortable and like working two jobs and splitting yourself in half.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And so
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
tell me, what have been some of the biggest learnings, wins, and struggles along the way? I feel like, do you have little moments where you're like, that's kind of a moment where I like felt like I made it, or have there been moments where it's like this has been way harder than I thought it was gonna be?
Yes, absolutely. I have those moments. I mean, I feel like all the time, like at least a few times a day. But within my career, what I've got to say, I felt like I was on the right path when I was able to teach someone how to do this and then have them be independent and successful doing what I taught them, and then replicating that process, and then also being able to offer opportunity to grow in a space, and seeing them, also have time freedom. That doesn't mean they get to do whatever they want. They get to decide when they work, right? Because it's different.
Yeah.
But and then seeing women like feel like they can have families, they can have babies, and still work and make it work for themselves. I mean, when I saw my first contractor, who's also one of my really good friends to this day, and also the godmother to my youngest child. She now has two kids, and she's been with me from the beginning. And just seeing that, and seeing the girls happy at the studios and love coming to work, like that shows me that okay, that is a win. Um, we're doing the right thing. And when the pandemic happened and we unknowingly were supposed to shut down for 3 weeks and then turned 18 months, like being able to still have our studios at the end of that um, showed me that we are still meant to be doing what we're doing. We could have totally folded, but then our community helped us with a GoFundMe. They helped like take care of financial things. It was just amazing to see it all kind of work out. And those studios are now like a staple in Pacifica, and it's amazing. So those things where I see a brand reputation and women growing in the spaces, or anything that I've had contribution to, has been a win. The struggles or things that as an owner I've had to deal with um, is growth. Everyone wants growth until you get growth. And then you realize that maybe some things needed to be tied up a little bit tighter before continuing to build another level to your empire.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so being okay with um, things being a little messy, and um, being solution oriented, even if solutions mean you have to dead some things and pivot, right? Like that has been hard, because when I started the brand, it was very personal. It was like my baby. Um, and being able to get to a point to be like, okay, I need to look at this non emotionally and make decisions, sound decisions for things to grow, I think has been a big challenge for me. But I feel like I've gotten better at it. I know I've gotten better, like measurably better, but that is hard.
Yeah. I think that it's one of those we see it so many times where it's like when you grow, it's hard to focus on, we call it business mechanics, but it's like when you are hiring, training, developing managers within your business and expanding locations, it's hard to keep everything as tight or have control over everything as much. And so it's like, what is okay to fall on someone else? What do I still need to have a view on? All of those things are just growing pains that you learn and kind of have to learn, especially if you want to create this empire or exactly what you want to create. It's like you can't do it all, and you also cannot, things can't stay as they always were, or cannot stay status quo.
Absolutely. There was this really, really good book, Rocket Fuel. I think it's by Gino Wickman, I believe, but it's an amazing, like I do a lot of audiobooks, but it really breaks down how to like have a hold on your business. And it breaks down a visionary role and also an integrator role, right? In the beginning of most businesses, you're both, until you have to decide which one are you going to focus on and let go of, so that you can continue to grow your business. So that was back to what you were saying. It does get to a point where you've got to have an org chart and you've got to figure out, like, okay, where am I going to fit into this? Right?
Yeah, and what are the things that light you up and fill you up when you finally have control and do not need to be doing everything?
For sure, for sure.
I love it. So tell me a little bit about critical players and people who you've either sought help with or helped you scale what you have built.
Um, that is a really good question. I would like to say that, I started this business as a single mom. And at that point, I was just kind of like I was in survival mode. Like, um, first off, the most pivotal person would have to be my first ever CPA and advisor because it's one thing to be able to make money, but now to be able to categorize things in a way so that you can keep as much of it before having to pay taxes. That was huge for me. I value my relationships with my financial advisors and my tax people because without them, I was spending a lot of money in taxes before I actually came up with a strategy, right? And got
Yeah.
educated with, like, okay, so these are the things that you need to put your money in so that you don't continue to pay more taxes than you're already paying. So my first well, the first person I can think of is that. Second would have to be my future vision of myself, and how I would like to eventually be living my life. And then I try to connect the dots to where I am right now. So whenever I feel unsure about decisions or what I want to do, I always think of what do I want this to look like in the future and what are the things that I need to do. So another pivotal person would have to be probably me in the future, like 10 years from now, right?
I
And
love that.
I just, my husband is an amazing support cheerleader. Um, and also, I've had mentors who are like 10 steps ahead, 5 steps ahead. So I value those relationships as well. Um, I value those relationships because, I mean, I would love to say my parents played a big role in all that. They're my biggest supporters, but at the same time, when you're asking for advice, you got to look at what shoes they're wearing and where they've been and what lens they're looking through. So, a lot of times this is lonely. This is lonely.
Yeah.
And I feel like um, I feel like the most important people are has to be, your purpose and where you want to go later. So that I hate to say that it's me, but it is me in the future. And
Yeah.
staying. I'm also a woman of faith, and I know that my purpose is bigger than just me, like doing something to make a lot of money. Like, I know I have a purpose to serve. It's just trying to connect all of that and make sure that I'm in alignment for whatever that purpose is. And when it's not, I always hope to and pray to have the vision to see it or feel it or um, just be redirected if it's not the path that I should be going. So, yes,
But how powerful is that? Where it's like, if you know what you want and you can get clear on what you want, it's very easy then to deconstruct the steps you need to take. And if even if what you want might not be clear on the what business do I want to start or what do I want to run, it's like if you know you want time with your daughter or you know you want this lifestyle for you and your family, it's like, okay, well then I have to figure out how to get there. And if you're not going to be there for another 50 years in one career, you got to redirect and pick a different career or it's a quick path
absolutely.
to misery in that sense, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I like to tell my students who are starting their businesses, like, just remember you didn't buy a job.
Yeah,
Yes, yes, you're a business owner. Yes, but you didn't buy a job. So just make sure like your back end is tight and your systems are tight because you will run out of time for
yeah,
you to be the one to provide the services, right? So, yeah.
it's so true. And so then I got two more questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
You discovered Owners Club, I believe, through a friend. And so tell me
Yes,
what you have gotten out of Owners Club, what you hoped to get out of Owners Club, and how this has helped you reach your future you.
absolutely. My really good friend, Kiana, who I mean, I've known since I was younger, also ventured off to start her own practice around the same time that I did. And, something that I learned very early on is you need to surround yourself with like-minded people or no one at all. And we would touch bases every so often, and it wasn't till maybe a few years ago, probably a little bit after the pandemic, where we started to get into coaching and started to get into training, and we started meeting weekly to just hold each other accountable. So that was a really awesome experience. And she found Owners Club. And, in one of our meetings, she was like, you know what? I just started this cohort. We dove into a lot of coaching. So I think we spent a lot of money during the pandemic for a lot of coaching. So we were just sharing things that we would learn.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where it's like, hey, okay, we need to stop. We need to stop and get to implementing and stop, consuming all of this information and doing, things halfway. So
Awesome.
then, yes. So she talked about, figuring out LTV to CAC. And I was like, what is that? You know, uh, I know my tax person can, help me with all of that. But as an owner, I think it's so valuable now that I know how to do it, to know your numbers and, know where your efforts are going and what they add up to, because there is an actual formula. So she told me about that. I was like, you know what? The next one that they have, can you ask them if you can get a kickback or whatever? Because I want in. And she then told me about the next cohort, which I'm so happy I'm in, because I've learned so much so far. And in one of our calls, I remember saying, like, I am looking at my business and I kind of don't even know who she is right now. Which is, it just means for me that there's a part of my business that I still feel like I need to get to know, right? And here I am 14 years later, right, with 3 locations and resident artists and trying to grow an e-commerce brand and now looking at something. But what's really cool about it is I have 14 years of data that I can go back
Yeah.
to and like recalculate and see like, oh, this worked back then, or this has been consistent, right? So that's really cool. So I've learned a lot about looking at my business unemotionally and just looking at data that I already have, um, and revisiting things and feeling more confident in the effort that I put forth now, versus like, I hope this works.
Yeah.
I hope this works. It
I
worked before.
I'm so honored though to hear you say that because you're a bit more progressed in terms of the stage of your business, the size of it, the scale of it than most of the other cohort members that we've had thus far. We've had 3 cohorts and they're typically for a bit more earlier stage and you are a bit past that, but to know that there is still value there, I think is reaffirming to us. So we thank you for feeling that way and sharing that because you have a lot going on and you've adjusted a lot and learned a lot and you've got the data. So it's amazing and we learn from founders and owners like you so much of like about our method and it goes back and forth because you are so much farther progressed than even Owners Club is old. So that is amazing to hear. And my last question for you is What would you say to business owners out there on who who do you think, or let me rephrase, who would you think would Owners Club would be beneficial to? Who would you recommend this to?
I would recommend this to, I'm not going to worry about a filter here, okay? You have to have the
Please
right
don't take it
attitude.
off.
You have to have the right attitude. You can't come in here and act like you know everything. You can't come in here and you know, you have to have a learning mindset, right? Even though I may have had my businesses for 14 years, I still come and I attend, and um, I take what, the content is, and take a look at my business and see, like, okay, how does this pertain to my business? Do I know this? You've got to have a really good attitude. And I really think for the people who are starting a business and really feel passionate about serving, and who really would like to get to know their business from the business standpoint versus just the service standpoint, I think this is a program for you, right? It's not a place where you're gonna sit there and advertise your businesses and um, things like that. You can't have that kind of attitude. I've already had some really amazing connections with people organically, outside of, the networking things that are put together in the program, and have gotten to know some really amazing people. So if you're open to networking and open to um, seeing how other people are running their businesses and also contributing, um, to other founders, I think this would be an awesome program. I really think everyone should know their numbers. Like everyone should know how
Yeah.
to calculate, you know, their LTV or the CAC. And if you don't know what that is, then yeah, you need it. You need to be here, right? Yeah. So I think, it's really interesting as a service-based business, service-based business, to take this course, because a lot of times you are the owner, you are the operator, and there will become a point where you want to pivot from being behind the chair, or from being behind the actual service, and being able to know that you can scale, but you have to know your numbers, right? So I coming
Yeah.
from a service business, I think this is an amazing program for anyone in the service industry who is a solo entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head where it's like oftentimes as owners you can spend your time how you want, and we have so many passionate, incredibly like masterful expertise in their industry. And then sometimes I personally did not like spreadsheets or numbers before being a part of Owners Club and coaching, and I hated them. I hated spreadsheets. I liked design. I liked pretty things. Spreadsheets were not pretty. And I just like, but it forces you to look at things where you just kind of have to look at it and be good enough at it to run your business.
Yes, and I am the same way. So I will spend a lot of time trying to learn something, but I've gotten to a point where it's like, can I hire somebody to do this? So a lot of the things that I've
Yeah.
learned in Owners Club are things that I would have hired out. And now that I know how to do it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wasted so much money.
You're like, "For 5 minutes."
And I too love things. I hate spreadsheets. I hate spreadsheets, but I think it's only because I needed to get into the learning curve. I did
Yeah,
customize mine so it became
same.
easier for me to look at.
Yours
And
is the prettiest
um,
dashboard I have seen.
I need it to be, because I need to be able to spend time on it.
I
But
love it though. It needs to
I
be
do,
aesthetically
yeah.
pleasing.
But I also
Well,
know how to use it.
MJ, exactly. And that's the biggest thing is like knowing, and then it's usually you only get better at it, Once you dive into the
Yeah.
numbers, they only become quicker and more routine, and then they're less daunting, and then you're offering to help someone else with their numbers.
Yeah, and I have to thank you so much for being able to help me with little things like I can't get this to line break. Maeve, help me. Help me. Give me
Help.
the
Yeah,
calculation. Help. What is this div? So I appreciate that
I
too
love
about
it.
the cohort because there's no stupid question. Not at all.
No, no stupid question. Because I mean, I was
Hmm.
there too. I don't think anyone who's in the cohort or even coaching was an ex like nobody was born an expert. We all learned it at some point.
Absolutely.
But MJ, thank you so much for taking the time. Your
Oh,
story is like so inspiring, and it personally got my entrepreneurial juices flowing in the way that you
oh,
time bound and set goals is just has like stuck with me. So I really appreciate you taking the time today, and it was lovely sitting down with you.
oh, thank you so much, Maeve. It was so nice to chat with you too.
Yes, we'll see you in the club.
All right, see you later. Bye.
Bye.